be a subspecies. And I base that simply on the uniqueness of that pattern. And if you look at the shells of the teardrop ones, they are consistent. So you have teardrop, you have this kind of shell. And you don't get, if you spawn regular blue maximas, you don't get some teardrop offspring. I've never seen that happen. So these are unique. Now, of course, these do breed with the other types, so you get mixes like this. Squamosa, it's as widely distributed as Maxima. It has about the same range. Very large, widely spaced scutes, and usually has large guard tentacles on the incurrent siphon. Mantle expands extremely large beyond the shells. The shells are fairly symmetrical, and the byssus opening is very, very small. There's the range. I always like these distribution maps, how they overlap onto the land, you know. Clearly we're taking into consideration the future sea level rise, right? So you can see a very symmetrical shell. Again, this is from James. And the widely spaced scutes, characteristic. Notice the widely opening mantle. Although I'm partial to all tridactid clams, I love them all. If I had to pick, I think Squamosa is my favorite, mainly because of how huge they open up. It's a beautiful, fleshy, wonderful mantle in these things. There are a number of different varieties. Usually their patterns are in spots, but sometimes in lines. And there are turquoise and blue ones, which are highly prized. Now, the scutes on this clam, boy, that really is dark. The scutes on this clam are widely spaced, just like Squamosa, but this was a Maxima clam, and it even had a fairly symmetrical shell. Possible that it's a hybrid, but I think that this is really just a pure Maxima that happens to fall into that range where it looks a lot like a Squamosa. But there are hybrids, despite the fact that there's some debate over that idea. I'm convinced that there are. This is a shot that I got off of Reef Builders, where they were talking about giving them a name, even Maxia hybrids, hybrid between Crocea and Maxima. This was also from Jake from Reef Builders, clam he photographed at the Interzoo trade show in Germany. And yeah, if you look at this, you can see a mantle pattern in the center of Squamosa, and on the outside, the pattern of Crocea. How big was this clam, Jake? 4 inches? Yeah, if it were like that, we'd have a more definitive answer. At 4 inches, you could say that maybe it is just a Crocea. But I think it's a hybrid. I think you're right. And this was another shot. I think this was from Reef Builders. Do you remember that or no? Might have been from Sea Dwelling Creatures. Yeah. These are, at least some of them, hybrid Maxima Crocea. Okay, let's talk about Tridacna rose wateri. In a cruise, some scientists were doing a dredge to collect specimens in an area to the northeast of Madagascar, out in the Indian Ocean. In this bank called Sayada Malha Bank. And they came up from deep water with some tridacnid clams that were kind of weird looking. They had really, really big scutes, a thin shell, very sharp margins, teeth-like margin in the upper part of the shell. And so they were like, God, it looks like Squamosa, but the byssus opening is round and large, so it's kind of like Maxima. And it was described as a new species. Rosewater was the scientist who did some of the original descriptions and separated the different genera of tridacnids, so it was named after him. There's the region where it was described. And that's a view of the top of the shell. You can see these very, very sharp dentations like that and big old scutes on it. That's the underside of the shell, big byssus opening, a lot like maxima, but very, very large scutes. Here's another shot of a different specimen. And wait, let's see. You can even see hints. It kind of looks a little bit like Crocea, but I mean mainly like a maxima clam, looking from the underside, right there. Okay, Tridacna costata was described very recently. It's most recently described clam, in 2008 from the Red Sea. Those of you who are familiar with my book, Invertebrates, A Quick Reference Guide, I showed a photograph of this species, and I called it a new locality for rosewater-eye because when I looked at it, it clearly to me was something new. Knowing of the existence of rosewater-eye, I thought, well, it seems to fit. Not too far away, Indian Ocean to the Red Sea, and here's a clam that's not maxima and it's not squamosa, so I think that's probably what it is. But the people who described this clam seem to think otherwise, but maybe we'll see whether that's true, and I'm going to make a little case for that in this lecture. A fossil known as Tridacna aegyptiaca from the same region appears to be the same species. So that's the region where it's known to occur. That's what costata looks like. Again, you see the very sharp tooth-like margins, big scutes like squamosa. There are guard tentacles on the incurrent siphon. This was from an article online describing them, and so there you can see costata here, gigas, which also has sharp margins like that. Notice the ridges here and the ridges right there. Costata has these fairly pronounced ridges compared to maxima and squamosa. Yeah. That's Tridacna aegyptiaca. And the people who described costata even went so far as to publish a paper suggesting that costata was at one time more abundant in the Red Sea and that now it's endangered. It was probably overfished by ancient civilization living along the shore of the Red Sea. And they based that by the large number of fossil shells that you could find, and that the clam is now quite rare. And when they published that paper, I was already aware of some facts that I'm going to tell you now, which I was sure that it doesn't bear up the concept. Well, first of all, where I found costata was, for me, a bit too deep for ancient civilization to be really fishing it. Although humans are rather resourceful. If you have a nice fleshy mantle that's a good source of protein, I guess we could say maybe they could have been in boats with long sticks to try to catch these things. But they're not like Crocea. They're not living in the intertidal. They're 15, 20 feet deep at least. I don't know whether that's true. It seems that T. costata is living outside of the Red Sea. Anthony Calfo visited South Africa a number of years ago and had an article in his publication, See the Journal. And in that article there was a photograph about that big of an aquarium that he visited when he was in South Africa. And in that little photograph there was a tridacnid clam, and the moment I saw it, I said, "Oh, that's costata." And so I called Anthony and I said, "Do you have that picture? Let me look at that. Send me that picture. Whose aquarium is that? I need to talk to the guy." And so I did. I got in touch with him, and I found out, first of all, that the clam had died since Anthony had been there. And I said, "Well, do you still have the shell?" "Yes, I still have the shell." "Well, send me a picture of the shell." And this is what he sent. And you can see the shape is clearly costata. And the mantle was too. So I said, where did you collect it? Did you get that in the Red Sea? No, I got it here in Africa. I said, oh, that's very nice. That's lending itself closer to what I thought initially about costata, that it might really be Rosewateri. If you go online and you do a lot of searching for pictures of tridacnid clams from Africa, you will come across a few. This is one of them. This is a photograph by just somebody who posted her photographs online, and one of them is this giant clamshell that she photographed there. And gee, doesn't that look like Egyptiaca? So, now what has happened to the range of costata? Endangered in the Red Sea, but over the entire coast of Africa. So is it endangered? I don't think so. Look at this photograph by Dr. MACNA. That's in the Red Sea. Notice the mantle shape, the overall look of the shell. Look at this one. This is in French, was a